Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is set to release a few months from now, on the last day of February in 2024. And while I am very excited for the game, like don't get the title wrong, I am still excited for this game, part of me is a bit worried. Not just about Rebirth, but just the general direction of the Remake Trilogy. And the more interview snippets that I see, the more that I'm kind of just wondering, what are they doing with this game? And I thought I have a YouTube channel, so why not sit down and talk about this, since this is basically the only time that I will be able to talk about this. Right now, we don't know what they're doing, but after Rebirth releases, everything will become a lot clearer. So, let's talk about this. To give some context though, just to frame everything a bit nicely, I started the Final Fantasy VII series by playing the remake, and I really liked it. I didn't absolutely love it, it's not like my favorite game of all time, but I really liked it. I loved the characters and the world, the gameplay was amazing. I just think it's really hard to rate that game because it is a part 1 out of 3, and it only covers like the first 5 hours of a 30-hour game, but I really liked it. And I liked it enough to check out the original not too long after. And the original is where I fell in love with not only Final Fantasy VII, but also just this franchise. Final Fantasy VII is an incredibly special game to me. It's top 5 games of all time. I love it so much. I love these characters. I love this world. But I wouldn't call myself a purist. Like, I'm always interested in seeing what they're doing with it with this remake. Which I do want to make clear, because the original game is there, it will always be there. I have it on Steam, I have it on PlayStation, I could get it on Switch. It's gonna be there, and the Remake Trilogy isn't gonna change anything about that. So I'm not mad about them changing stuff, so to say. I also played some of the compilation stuff, or I watched or I read some of it, like I played the original Crisis Core. I should really replay it with Reunion, but that aside, I also watched the Advent Children movie, and I read the On the Way to a Smile novel, which is extremely underrated and not talked about enough. It's actually, out of the compilation, probably my favorite thing. Like, Final Fantasy VII is of course number 1, then On the Way to a Smile, and then Crisis Core. I don't know, not a lot of people talk about it, but I think it's a fantastic novel. But yeah, that aside, now, let's talk about the Remake Trilogy and the main point of this video. What I'm worried about is of course not the gameplay or the game design. From what we've seen, we've actually seen quite a bit, and everything looks fantastic. From the gameplay, which looks great, you have the action combat, but also still some elements from the original with the ATB gauge. You have the limit breaks, all of that stuff from the first part of the remake, but now you also have the team-up attacks. And just all of the things that they added looks really cool. I'm very excited to play the game. Of course, the game itself also looks beautifully, graphics-wise. All the areas look super faithfully, but also very beautifully recreated. I don't have any complaints there. Also, the open world, that it's just all connected, but it's all open areas with choke points that you kind of move through. I think that's the best way to do it, to not have a fully open world, but to still make it accessible and to still make it so that you can go everywhere. No complaints about all of that. The thing that I'm more worried about, it's also not really complaints, it's just worry, is then of course a story. Because on my timeline, I constantly see quotes like, Final Fantasy VII Remake or Rebirth will be a faithful remake of the original, while also having surprises for everyone. Or stuff like, we don't want to point new players to the original Final Fantasy VII. If someone wants to get into Final Fantasy VII, we will point them to the Remake Trilogy. And stuff like that makes it seem like it replaces the original, but in my opinion, that is just impossible right now. I cannot imagine playing Final Fantasy VII Rebirth without knowing anything from the original. Like, yeah, it worked with the original Final Fantasy VII Remake, because it introduces everything. It's the first part, it introduces the characters, it introduces the world. Even if it has some differences, it still follows the same plot, mostly until the end, where of course you kill the Whispers, And because you kill the Whispers, I don't think that that can remain true for the rest of this trilogy. Because the point of the Whispers is literally that they're trying to keep you from changing events. They're trying to keep fates the same. But you kill them and you basically kill fate, so anything can happen now. In the trailers, they're also talking about merging timelines, one of which has Zack in it. Fucking Zack, I love him, but he should be dead. And him being alive already makes the remake completely different from anything that the original had. It could just be marketing bullshit, trying to get people to buy the game regardless of whether or not they played the original, but there's just no way that the optimal way to experience Final Fantasy VII now is Final Fantasy VII Remake, then Crisis Core Reunion, and then Rebirth. Like, Crisis Core already completely spoils the OG. It completely spoils Rebirth even, if they're following the same plot. But they're saying that Crisis Core is essential to understanding the plot of Remake? So even if they still visit the same locations, even if they still have stuff like the Nibelheim flashback, even if they have the Junon sequence that will remain the same, keeping all of that in mind, how can they have a faithful remake where Zack is alive, where there are two timelines, where Sephiroth is already messing with Cloud? All of this stuff is going on. I just don't really get it. They're also saying that there will be a big surprise for both new players and old players. But again, how can you surprise old players if the point is to tell the same plot? You can't. A lot of people are thinking that Aerith might survive this time, but Final Fantasy VII with Aerith and Zack surviving is just not Final Fantasy VII. Now, as I said in the beginning, they can do something different. I don't mind if they fully commit to making this a sequel series, as long as it's good, of course. But I don't really see the point in baiting people with saying that it's a remake, while still sticking to the original plot, while then also making massive changes. I personally don't think Aerith will survive. I don't know if this is just me buying into their marketing and thinking that they will hit the same plot points, which would then be Aerith dying. But I think the surprise is going to be something like Zack will be there and he's going to try to save Aerith but fail. It's going to be an extremely depressing scene. But I love depressing stories in games, so I would be here for it. But then what would happen after that, I guess, is like Zack would join the party for part 3, which is then faithful to a certain extent because Aerith will be dead, but it's also completely different because Zack will be there. The trailers also keep talking about these merging timelines, but again, how can you do this while staying faithful? It's just not gonna be. It's not gonna be Final Fantasy VII. It's gonna be something else, and again, I think that it's fine, but why keep saying that this will be faithful? And if somehow it is faithful, if somehow it really is a faithful remake of the original, with a small difference here and there, then what's the point in this? What's the point in making it seem like there's so much more? What's the point in having two timelines? What's the point of having Zack be alive? What's the point of killing Faith at the end of part 1? If in the end it will be faithful, which means that nothing will change anyway. I just don't really get what they're going for exactly, and that's what worries me. So while I'm really excited to see what they'll do with it, I'm also kinda like, I don't know what they're doing. Is this Final Fantasy VII? Is this not Final Fantasy VII? And it's really strange. Part of me actually kinda loves it because I love the original Final Fantasy VII and that game is not going to be going anywhere, and I kinda love this whole thing of wondering what the fuck Nomura is cooking. Like, every trailer is super exciting, because on one side you do get to see all of those moments that you know being recreated in this fantastic looking game, but on the other side there's also this mystery that's slowly being puzzled together. But then I also don't know, because what are they doing? Is this even gonna be good? Like, Remake was good, but Remake was still very faithful. Rebirth could be good. Rebirth could be faithful. But if it is faithful, that kind of makes Remake worse, because Remake is setting up this massive change. And if it has this massive change, then why are they seemingly sticking close to the original? And how can you have something new while also being the old thing again? I don't think you can do both, and maybe they're trying to do both, and I don't think that's possible. I think that that might be trying to do too many things, and that it's gonna fall flat in doing that. I don't know. I also have no idea how people that didn't play the original Final Fantasy VII will be able to enjoy the Remake Trilogy to the fullest extent, especially because they're hinting heavily in the remake that this is actually all a sequel to the original game. Like, Sephiroth and Aerith are basically confirmed to have their memories from the original from Advent Children, so again, how is this gonna replace the original plot as one point? How can a sequel replace the original? And another point, how can you enjoy a game that is a sequel to a game that the developers are telling you not to play, but at the same time they're still trying to tell a coherent story? Or at least you'd hope that they want to tell a coherent story in making this a sequel. Like, I would even go as far as to say that the original is mandatory to play. Like, yeah, you can play the original Final Fantasy VII Remake, like the first part, but there's so much in that game that you just don't get. There's so much that you just don't see until you play the original, and that basically just transforms the whole game. And it transforms it to a point that I don't see how you can enjoy the next games in this series without playing the original. And the problem is that you can't just play these games and play OG afterwards, because then OG will be ruined, since all of the surprises will be spoiled already. A lot of people probably had surprises spoiled already just by playing Remake and then Crisis Core. And the original Final Fantasy VII is a very special experience. And right now, if this Remake Trilogy is finished, or even with Rebirth already, if someone plays those games first, you can never go back to the original. And I think that that's a real shame, because they're really trying to make this trilogy replace the original, even though they're just not the same, and they won't be the same. So if you're someone who's listening to this, first off, thanks for listening to me rant about Final Fantasy VII for a bit. And second of all, do yourself a favor and please play the OG before playing the remakes. You can still play the remake afterwards. It's honestly very cool to have knowledge of the original and to see the trailers from Rebirth, to recognize things, to see all of these locations that you remember, but they're so different now, and they look gorgeous, and it's awesome to see them recreated. So the Rebirth experience, the remake experience won't go anywhere, but the original experience will not be the same after playing these games. So, in my opinion, it's a one-way road, and it would be a shame if you hop on now instead of hopping on at the starting point with the original. And I get that you might be kind of turned off by how the original looked. It is very aged. I personally didn't mind it. I kind of loved how it looked even. I thought it was really charming to have the little chibi guys running around on the 2D field. I really liked it. But I get that not everyone is into that. For those people, you can of course mod the game if you think the 2D backgrounds are confusing, like I have a friend that thinks that somehow. There are mods for that. You can make it look nicer, you can make it look more clear. I would just highly recommend checking out the original, because this might be the last chance you'll have at it, at least if you're planning on playing Remake. And if you're not planning on playing Remake, play it anyway. It's a great game. You're gonna have a good time, trust me. And if you don't have a good time with it, come back to this video and tell me in the comments that you didn't like it. But yeah, that was it for this video. This video is very rambly, I'm sorry. But the fact that it's a bit rambly also connects back to my thoughts on Rebirth so far. I'm extremely excited for it. All the trailers look awesome. I can't wait to play it, but I'm so scared at the same time. I want to be super hyped for it, but I can't. Something in me is like, what are they doing? What's going on here? And that's, my mind is a bit messy about this. And this video will probably be messy as a result of that. Usually I have everything scripted, but I just wrote some notes. I thought I just rant a bit about these thoughts that I had, but I hope that I still got my point across, and I hope that you were still able to enjoy the video. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, be sure to leave a like, leave a comment. I'm really curious as to what you guys are thinking about this, because online I mostly see either blind hate from Final Fantasy VII purists, or I see blind positivity saying that this will be the best thing ever made. But in my opinion, it's just way too soon to say any of that. So I'm curious as to what you all are thinking about this. Also, check out my channel if you like this video. You'll probably like the rest of my channel. I talk a lot about JRPGs and PlayStation, and this is a PlayStation exclusive JRPG that I'm talking about, so you'll probably find something interesting on my channel. But with that, I am gonna leave you all here. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed, and hopefully I'll see you all again soon.